to use ARIS, you need two devices. You'll need any kind of a computer or a desktop, and you also need a iDevice. It can be an iPad, an iPod, or a iPhone. So I have those two things here. With the iDevice, there is an application that is called ARIS Interactive. You can search for it in the App Store. I have mine already. And you'll get something that has an icon that looks something like that. And we'll get into this more later. So for the computer side, to start with ARIS, you're going to go to what's called, you're going to go to arisgames.org. So that's ARISGAMES.org. You can also do it by Googling for ARIS or ARIS Interactive. And there you'll see a menu on the top here, and we're going to click on Make Games, fairly intuitive. Click the Launch Editor Now, which is how you're going to actually make your games. And now if you're new to ARIS, you'll need to register. And it's pretty quick, but I already have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and just log in. Now once you log in, did that wrong. And once you log in, you'll get to a page that has all your games. Since I've made a few, I have some already preloaded. If for you guys, you're going to do create a new game, and you can do name of game and game description. I already made a game though, so I'm just going to use this one. Actually, I already populated this one, so I will make a new game. Sorry for the confusion. Bear with me. Okay, so I'll make a new game, and I'm going to create it. Okay, so here we have the new game screen. It's just a generalized map. I'll try to move this so that you can see the slide there. Let me see if I can get this in a better position. Okay, so now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on Madison, Wisconsin, just because that's where I'm going to make the game, or well, the game that I'm making. We're not really making a game. Alright, I'm just going to arbitrarily make a game on Picnic Point. Doesn't matter. Alright, so now that I'm zoomed in my location, there's 3 objects that you can use in ARIS. Characters, items, and plaques, all of which you can load from the Add Object screen. So we're going to add one of each. So Add Object Character, Add Object Item, and Add Object Item, Add Object Plaque. If I accidentally populated one too many and made another plaque, I can always delete them by dragging it down to this trash bin right there. So let's go in order. Let's go with our characters. Now the ability of characters I'll show you on here. This is what it's going to look like when the game's done. Let me load up a game that I've made already so you can see what this dialogue is going to look like. Okay. So here I have a search screen, search for games. I'm just going to make one that I've made already. Unfortunately, it's connecting to Wi-Fi really quick. Okay. So alright, well unfortunately my iPad right now is futzing out with its Wi-Fi. So let me try to go into the settings really quick and fix that, and I'll just go to the other screen for you guys. Okay, apologies for that. Okay, it's now connected. Okay, so I'm going to search for a game I've already made and click on it. And I'm going to show you what a character will look like. Once it loads. Alright, so you can see that I have my location here, and this is how the game is going to start. And then I have some characters I can interact with here. Now there's a couple ways to go about it. If I were to turn off quick travel, which I'll talk about more later, I would not be able to just click on these characters and interact with them. I'd actually have to physically walk over to them. But for now, since I'm just developing this game, I have it on quick travel. A note about the icons, those have invisible backgrounds, which you can do in Photoshop. If you don't, it'll look a little bit gaudy. So my first character, I'm going to interact with this fisherman, and he said something. So this is what a character dialogue will look like. I can have two options, I'm from Madison, I'm not, and his response will change depending on what I say. So we have this dialogue here, right? And he gives me a fishing pole. So let me show you how to do that on the programming side of it. So now that you can see what it'll look like. So we can click on the unnamed character, and here I'm going to name it Scientist, just for an arbitrary name. And I'm just going to, what you can do is sometimes I just Google images. It depends on what the copyright is, and I can do Scientist. And I actually just ran this earlier, so I already have this saved to my desktop, so I'm just going to use this. So for my media picker, this is going to be the actual image that pops up when I talk to the character. I often make them the same, but you don't have to. So the media picker is when you actually click on the character, the image that you see when you come in dialogue with the character. And I'm going to upload a new one, and I'm going to name it Scientist, and then I'm going to upload it from my computer. Alright. And upload. Alright. And then I'm also going to do it for the icon picker. The icon picker is the one that you see on the map screen itself. So here I would upload the Scientist. I'm not actually going to do it right now because we don't need to. So now you have a couple of different things right here. You have your greeting script. Your greeting script is the very first thing that your character sees when they click on the character, that you see when you click on the character. So in my game it said, hey, welcome to Madison, right? So let's just have that. Now, the closing script I seldom use. It's if you want to have a script that happens after the conversation is done. I don't tend to find it necessary. Now this is what's important. You have different dialogue options that you can take. If you want to add one, you press this plus sign here. I'm going to give 2 branches of dialogue for this so I can show you how to do it. Really quick development notes, I'll just go over it. Kind of self-explanatory, that's what you can put in for yourself if you want to. Some description about this character. Now back to this, so the greeting script says, hey, welcome to Madison, and I want to have a couple options. So in my game I said yep and nope, right? So yep, I'm from, oh, welcome to Madison, are you from around here? Sure. So yes and no. So I want the dialogue tree to change depending on what the answer is. So if the scientist was just gonna respond with one thing, I would just say, oh cool. And maybe for no, I'd say, well, let me show you around, right? And that would be totally a viable option if you wanted to just have it like that. The only thing then is that the conversation would end. And a lot of people want to have more conversation than just that, right? So what I would do is, this is when you get into HTML. You can go, what you do is you open the caret, and you go dialogue. For those that can't see, it's a arrow. You put it in little carets. Maybe I can just, I'll put this in there, now you can see it. So you have caret, dialogue, and then you're going to start, since this already is the player controlled, we're going to start with NPC. So this is the non-player controlled response. So let's say they say, oh cool, take this fishing pole. Okay, because it's on the lake, let's say. So that can be theirs, and then I have to end their script, just like HTML. So we have dialog open, NPC open, oh cool, take this fishing pole, close the non-player controlled, and now I'm going to open up the PC, the player controlled dialog. So we can say, sure, thanks, right? And then we can say end the player controlled, and at this point I think it's a good place to end the dialog as well. So you do that by doing \dialog. Oh, if I could spell. Alright. And we can do the same for this. So that's going to give you that branching dialog that you want. Now you have a couple things over here, which is a requirement and an exchange. Those are really important. Sometimes script, especially if you're doing multiple options, so say you have a couple questions and then, or you have a couple of back and forth and then you want to have another option to have two different responses, that's when you would use a requirement. So if we open up this screen, the requirements editor is the same throughout the game. You have player has not or player has done something or has some quantity of objects in order to be able to say this option. So in order to say yes or in order to say no, the player has to have done something. So we can populate it again by pressing the plus sign. We can change these by clicking on the tab, player has not. So let's say in order to, say you're from Madison, you needed an item of some sort. So in order to say yes to that question, player has, let's say, one quantity of an item, and we'll use our unnamed item. Now this over here reads just like a book. It goes over in the lines, so if you want multiple requirements, this would read player has at least one quantity of item and has something else, and we can populate that something here. And player has already greeted some character, let's say, right? You can do or if you want it to be an and or condition, so they have done this or that, one or the other, and it reads across, so this one doesn't actually matter. So we're going to save this for now, and that is about all you need to know for the character editor. You can delete them here, and we're going to save and close this. Now items act mostly as things that allow or enable other things, or as clues to the game. So in one game I've used them as clues to a certain hidden location, and you find them along the way. They can also be useful if you're using something like you need a certain number of X in order to complete the mission, for people to go out and find them. They can have a variety of functions. So in this game, I have an item that I got in exchange for greeting the character, and that was a fishing pole. So this is what an item looks like in ARIS. You see that you have it. There's not a lot that you can do with it, but having an item can enable you to have new abilities. So now that I have the fishing pole, it enabled a plaque to start populating places where fish would appear, right? I also have another item which gives some instructions on how to use the fishing pole. So items can be informative, or they can be something that they just need to collect, or they can be something that allows other things to happen when you have the item. So items themselves are very easy. Here we have an unnamed item. I'm just going to name it a fishing pole. Again, this is what you're going to see in the map screen, and this is what you're going to see when you actually open that item. I'm not going to populate them with images right now because it's fairly self-explanatory. This one you choose which type it is, so is the item an image file, is it an audio file, or a video file? You could collect, like in Dow Day, they have items as video files of historic events. That can be an object or something that you can do, and the same here, you have an icon picker. They're not picky about what types of images. JPEG definitely works, the sizes don't matter. They do have a recommended image size. I would go smaller rather than larger because it only can take up as much as an iPad screen. So most of the time you're just going to use normal items, and these you're not really going to worry about, especially if you're beginning with ARIS, so you don't have to worry about those. You can make a description if you want, if it's helpful. You don't have to. One thing I realized I didn't go over with characters, I'm going to go over quickly, is this exchange. In my game, we had, after the conversation, we had a, oh, you can't quite see that exchange over there. We had it give me a fishing pole, right? So what I did to do that was do, you have different actions here. So I can give an item, I can take an item, and that item for me was the fishing pole. So when I respond with this, the fishing pole is acquired, right? Okay, so we're going to save and close that. Now the last one is the plaques, and plaques work and function as they can be used for multiple things. So we use them as voicemail messages that guided a. Let me move this so you can see it. Maybe I can move this back too. Voicemail messages to guide the narrative. They can be used. I have one where the plaque itself starts populating itself, and when you click on the plaque you can get different fish. They can be used for audio, video, data, whatever you want them for. They're just kind of just like what they sound. They're something that contains audio, video, or image data somewhere in the game. So you can name it, same exact thing, and here you have your content. Media picker is going to be if you want to add audio or video as your plaque, you can do that. Now, change player inventory when viewed is helpful if you want the plaque to give you items, and exactly what you can do here. So in the one where it's fish, it gives you a different type of fish. And you can also do make spawn, so you can make the plaques spawn themselves. You're probably not going to do that in kind of an entry-level game, but it's something to know that exists. So this is just different probabilities for how many it will spawn around what location, and it is spawning again the plaques. Alright, so I'm going to save and close this, and now I'm going to put these on my map by dragging them over. So I'm just going to randomly place them because for now it doesn't really matter. So I'm dragging these over into the game. Now once they're in this screen, if I wanted, let's say, I'm going to drag an extra plaque into this screen, but I can't put it back to the trash can again. So what I do to delete it is I click on it, I double click, and I do delete this location if you need to get rid of one. Alright, so now we have a couple options. So let's go in order again. Let's do our character. And here we have the label that you see on the screen. You have the nearby range, and this is how close your GPS has to be to target it. When you're in the ARIS game and you're not using quick travel, so you have to actually be going to these locations, you have a certain range at which you can start interacting with them. So I'd have to walk, this says, within 30 meters of the scientist location that I placed in order to interact with it. I like to give some benefit of the doubt or some error, and I like to up it a little bit, but it really depends on what your game is. And it depends on the size of the thing that they're going to. If it's a building or a location, you might want it to be much bigger so that it can queue when they get in the right location. Now, there's a couple of things. The big thing that a lot of you are probably interested in is the QR code. Now, QR codes function instead of actually walking and using GPS. If you're in a building, these are really useful. They allow it so that you can scan codes to interact with the scientist instead of actually having to go to a location. So if I were to use this and I wanted to interact with a scientist, say in a chemistry building or something, and in order to do that I would have to scan this QR code. This one is unique to that scientist character, so I would print this out, put it somewhere wherever it is I want them to interact with that character. And that would, when I scanned it with my iDevice, which I'll show you the scanning mode, it would pop up the character. So in here we have this thing called a decoder, and then you just scan the code. You can also enter the code. You get this like 4-digit code. You can do that as well. Now error text, I never use it, so I think that's just if something were to go wrong, what would it say? I never use that. Now you have a couple of options here. You have the ability to hide a character or an item. What that does is you won't know that it's there until you get there. So that's really helpful. I had a game where you got a bunch of visual cues as to where you had to meet this person, and so you had to figure it out for yourself, and it was a hidden location, right? So you had to find it, and it wasn't displayed on the map. So if it's hidden, you won't see it on the map like you saw those characters in my game. I'll show you again for reference. So right now I see my character on the map here. If I were to hide it, I wouldn't see it, and I wouldn't know it existed until I got close to it. Quick travel means I can quick travel this location. It means I can play remotely. I don't actually have to be here. Wiggle just makes the character wiggle a bit. And display label on map, I'm honestly not quite sure exactly what it does. Now these are important. Edit requirements is what the requirement has to be to interact with this character. So say I could only interact with the character, the scientist, after I collected X number of items, right? Because that was my quest or something. Now this is the exact same screen as the conversation editor. So player has or has not done something or has something. We have at least a quantity of item, viewed plaque or script, greeted character, etc., 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 right? All these different conditions. If we did want it to be has at least quantity of item, we could change the quantity here. So they could have at least 5 of a certain item, let's say, if you wanted to. If you want to delete it, you can delete it there. You populate it by pressing the plus sign there. Alright, so that is what you do for the once it's already uploaded into the map, how you edit the object. You can, once it's uploaded map, you can still edit it here. It just changes what you're able to edit, right? Okay, so these are very similar. There's really not much different. I'm just going to check to make sure this is the same as what we've gone through before. Okay, now the only thing that's different with this one is we have a quantity for the items, so how many items are there. And that you can change if you wanted them to collect 5 instead of 1. -1 for infinity. It's useful if you're having glitches where I think I had one time where the item wasn't populating. I think it changed it to infinity to make it so that whatever was glitching out wasn't making it so that the item wasn't appearing and never appeared. Sometimes that can be helpful if you're debugging. You can make the quantity infinity. And we are going to save and close that. Now the last couple things is we have game settings. And now this is important because if you want to debug your game using this to make sure that your characters and stuff work, you're going to have to say game ready to be published or rated. You're going to have to check that because otherwise you won't be able to find it. So that will need to be checked. And again, I don't know if I went over it well. In order to find a game, I'm going to log out of this game, leave game. In order to find the game, I have to go to search, and I have to search for my title, right? So that's how you find the game that you're working on. Now, you can have an introduction plaque, which is really useful because a lot of times when people step in, they don't know exactly what to do right away. So, hang on one second. Okay. They might not know exactly what to do right away, so an introduction plaque can explain what the first quest is or where the first location that they need to travel to. So you make a plaque and you can add some information about what they're supposed to be doing. Ending plaque is self-explanatory. This is a description of your game. You can have icon picker, etc. Now, the other thing, if you want to add multiple people, it works kind of like Google Docs. Once you add people onto the game as editors, they can edit the game and do things from their computer as well through their login. Now this is important. These are the tabs that you have in your game, so I'm going to show you the tabs. So you can see at the bottom of my screen here I have multiple tabs, right? I have quest, map, inventory, decoder, more, and I have multiple in there too. Now sometimes games function where you don't actually want all these tabs, so you can select and deselect them by pressing, just clicking on them. For instance, if you're doing a tour, like we're doing for the Madison Public Libraries, we have everything deselected except for the inventory and scanner. Oops. Because it's an indoor game, so the map gets in the way and is awkward and confusing. And the inventory can have items, which are the floor plans that they can go around, and then the scanner can scan for the QR codes for the tour. Typically in a game, you'll probably want quests, map, inventory, and scanner. You may or may not want the profile in the notebook. It's up to you. Alright, so that's really all there is there. And the last thing that you need to know is the quest editor. So if you have quests, you can do those here. So that's nice for guiding the game or the narrative to show that they have things that they need to get done. And move that a little bit. So new quest, I'm going to say get a fishing pole, text when incomplete, get a fishing pole, and then text when complete, congrats. Whatever it might be, it just shows that they've done it or not. Incomplete media means what do they see in their quest screen when they haven't completed it, so it could be an X to show they haven't done it yet. The same for complete media, when they've completed the quest, what do they see? So maybe it's a check mark to see that they've done it. Notification style is if it's going to take up the full screen when they say you have a new quest, or whether it's going to be just the top bar. Requirements to show the quest is kind of just like we've done. So in order for them to get the new quest, so let's say in order for them to know about the fishing pole quest, they run into a character that says, oh, I lost my fishing pole, can you find it for me? So in that case, I would say player has greeted character, and that would be the person who's looking for the fishing pole. Let's say the scientist was looking for it, right? So that's what we would do. And then in order to complete it, we would say character has a fishing pole, right? Or character greeted the person that needed the fishing pole. Okay. So we can save and close that. And most of this I would never use these ones. And you probably won't ever need to use them. I would say that's probably about it. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful. And I hope you guys have fun making ARIS games. Alright, bye.